Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you, Serena, so much. Writer and activist Anne Lamott said, "I do not understand at all the mystery of grace, only that it meets us where we are, but it doesn't leave us where it found us." Well, you know, there are many words, the definitions of grace in our English language. You know, the grace of a ballerina, you know, that kind of comes to mind. The grace that we say before meals and giving thanks. The grace that a banker might give us as an extension on the end of our loan, you know, past the due date. And then there's the grace in traditional Christian parlance, and it is defined or seen as the free and unmerited favor of God, as in the salvation of sinners and the bestowal of blessings. And when I read that, I thought, well, gee, that's almost like luck. You know, maybe we get it and maybe we don't. And I thought, well, there's got to be some other ways to look at grace, and maybe you have some ideas or understandings in your own mind coming in here. But I'm curious, you know, if you want to shout out a few or not, or just kind of hold them to yourself. Tolerance. Favor. Faith. Love. Gratitude. So yeah, you see, there's a lot here. Well, you know, Service, yes. Well, when I started to think about grace, you know, the first thing that loaded up is that hymn, Amazing Grace, and yes, grace is amazing. And then the next line of that hymn was, "It saved a wretch like me." And I thought, really? Am I a wretch? Do I need grace to unwretch me? So I thought there's got to be some other things. And so I said, well, let me go to the Daily Word. And I looked up grace in the archives, and I found a few things. And I found that grace is God's love in action, okay? Grace is the presence of God made manifest. And God's grace flows to me and through me. Well, that's all well and good, I thought, but how do we get there? And then I came across a writing and found grace is the antidote to control. And I sat with that for a minute because I don't know about you, but I like to control a lot of things. Yeah. And yet there are certain things I can't control. And so that's where grace comes in. And so I thought we could explore that a little bit today, if you're with me on that. But before we get into that, I first want to dispel the illusion of wretchedness. I am not wretched. You are not wretched. We are not wretched. And we know in unity we are created in the likeness and image of God. And God is not wretched. At least I think so. So, no, God is not wretched. And so grace doesn't come to us on a whim. It's part of who we are. I like to think of grace as an inherent thing within us. You know, much like if you're familiar at all in unity with the 12 powers, those are innate in us. They are part of us as part of our creation. And I think grace comes under that category. And in the Gospel of John, chapter 1, verse 16, it says, "From his fullness we have all received grace upon grace." We have it. We have it within us. So I can use an antidote. I did that the last time, too. I stumbled on that word. Antidote. You know, like in medicine, you have an antidote to a poison. I can use an antidote of grace for the poison that control may dissipate in my life, you know, all over. And so better yet, you know, what does grace feel like? What does it look like? I was wondering if you could try a little experiment with me. Clench your fists really, really tight, as tight as they can, and let that feeling like extend on your arms and in your abdomen and your legs, and just as tight and tight as that can be. That's control. Take a breath and release, and feel that grace that is within you. So another way to experience grace is just being in the present moment with what is. You know, if we take a walk in nature and we see the magnificence of some beautiful trees, or we're, you know, seeing the sunset or out on the beach, we can feel that grace right there, right now. We can hear grace in a beautiful song, in the laughter of a baby, and remind us of our own inner child. We can, and you know, I don't know about it, but as we feel grace, our hearts open up. My heart opens up wide, your heart opens up. It's just that expansion, really, of the love and peace of God and happiness in that moment. And in that moment, I recognize that there's nothing for me to control. There's nothing for me to do but just to be there and experience grace. So you might wonder why it's important to kind of look at this or understand or get the concept in your mind about grace and control. And motivational speaker and writer Dennis Waitley said, "Happiness cannot be traveled to, owned, earned, worn, or consumed. Happiness is the spiritual experience of living every minute with love, grace, and gratitude." Okay. But what if in this moment I'm not happy? I'm miserable. I don't like my life. I don't like my job. I do like my job, everyone. It's okay, I do. I don't like the way things are going in this country. I don't like the results of the, I don't like, can you get the picture? I'm just not happy. I don't like the election. I don't like things. But what can I do with those feelings of anger, of disappointment, of regret, of grief, sadness for things in my life? Well, the Buddhist monk and spiritual teacher from Vietnam, Thich Nhat Hanh, taught that those feelings are really a part of us as well. And we're not to push them aside or shove them away or under the rug or the carpet. They're a part of us. And what we can do with those feelings is to cradle them, like a mother cradles a child. There, my anger. I know you are here. I am with you. And to stay with that feeling for as long as it lasts, for that time. And what we might notice is that it dissipates into the nothingness from which it came. You know, we do have a choice with our feelings. Something comes up and we can react and keep that going, or we can respond with love and grace and awareness of that part of us that may be hurting, that may be sad, that may be despondent. And it's okay for as long a time as we need to heal and to come into that state of grace that exists. So I did recognize that giving up the idea that I could control anything in my life put me in a state of grace. It was tough. It's tough. I want to control everything. But I know that's not possible. So then I realized I could extend grace to myself, you know, when I'm feeling tense and tight, and I can take a breath and I can extend grace to myself. Well, Thanksgiving dinner is coming up for those of you who celebrate, participate. It's a big family holiday. Everybody gets together. And I have found that Thanksgiving dinner is probably the most challenging event of the year. Why? Because everybody has an idea of what should be on the Thanksgiving table. Who wants creamed onions? Who wants corn? Who wants string beans? Who wants stuffing? Oh, by the way, the stuffing has to be like my mother made it. And then there's a sweet potato casserole with the melted marshmallows on top. You get it? And so it can be a source of friction and tension. My family's coming for Thanksgiving. They're coming to Miami and my little studio apartment. I was getting pretty stressed about that. You know, I have all this stuff up north to feed the armies, but in my little apartment, I don't. Thank goodness there's only a few of them. And they're adults, and I made the decision that I could extend grace to myself. I could allow them to extend grace to me. They're adults. We can work it out. We can do it and enjoy the pleasure of each other's company at this time in the holidays. Well, then the question becomes, how can we experience more grace and happiness in our lives? And the first thing I want to say is to be gentle. Be gentle with yourself. We're gentle with ourselves. Things aren't always so easy. And in that spirit of gentleness and grace, it's really kind of where we want to land. Doesn't do us any good to have negative self-talk, to be down on ourselves for not being further along in our process than where we think we should be. And in a way, that's sort of like being violent towards ourselves. Not a good thing. So gentleness. Be gentle with ourselves. And in that way, we can experience that spaciousness and that grace of God. So with the holidays approaching, you know, there are many opportunities to give and receive grace, both to ourselves and to other people, you know, whether it's through entertaining, through having our family, through its activities within our congregation, and I'll put a plug in for the toy drive that's coming up. You know, there are ways to extend grace. The other is random acts of kindness. You know, we've done that with Unity on the Bay as well. And there's something about the random acts of kindness that I'd like to mention, and that is the surprise. You know, you come up to somebody and they're surprised. And that's, I think, another aspect of grace is that surprise. We don't expect it, you know, carrying some heavy things. And somebody comes up to me and says, hey, can I help you with that? I wasn't expecting it. And that surprise is a demonstration of grace. Well, I have a little story to share with you. Leo, our engagement director, moved down here from Chicago with his winter clothes. And he couldn't quite figure out, like, why he did it, but he did it, and there he's got all these winter clothes, and besides which, they don't fit anymore. So we were talking about it, and I said, you know, Leo, I'm going up north next week with my car. I could take them, and I'm sure there are people up there that could use them. He lit up. In that moment, that was grace for him. So he came over and he put the clothing in the car, big, heavy bags of clothing, 3 of them. And I'm like, okay, fine, I'll drive them up. And all the while I'm thinking, what am I going to do? Who's it going to give them to and whatnot? So I calmed myself down and I said, well, let me just, put them out on the bed and invite people over and see. And if nobody wants them, I'll take them to the 2 places that I know that can distribute them. I called up the spiritual life director at Silver Bay YMCA, which I'm affiliated with as well, and Chris said, wow, that's terrific. We have people here working from foreign countries and they don't have winter clothes. They would be so appreciative. So he came over, we bagged them up, and he took them. And he said, whatever people don't need, I can distribute. I can take them to those 2 places. That was grace for me. That it was one less thing that I had to do in my schedule. It was grace for him because he got to distribute them and pass them out. And I told the story back to Leo, and it was grace for him again. So it is a cycle. It's something that I think that the more we do recognize it and the more we see it, the more is available to us. So, no control in that situation, just grace. In conclusion, we have within us the antidote to the suffering caused by thinking that we can control the uncontrollable. The antidote is grace. When I've given up control and allowed myself to be fully present in each moment, I'm in a position to be surprised by grace. We can see and experience grace all around us by noticing the good in ourselves and in each other and appreciating the gifts of each day. Maybe the writer of the hymn, Amazing Grace, was in a dark place when he experienced a transformation. And I can extend grace to him, knowing that in the past many have been helped by that hymn. For me, my understanding of grace is a work in progress. I know that we are 100% human and 100% divine, and I believe we are on a journey, we're all on a spiritual journey, to discover how to use our divine self. And I believe grace is one of those ways. So today, we're called to extend the antidote of grace to ourselves and to others, especially when we notice we are trying to control the uncontrollable. And so it is.